Hey everyone, I want to welcome you back to my channel. I've got something really special tonight, and I have a very, very special guest that has made a long drive of over an hour to be here with me tonight. Her name is Tracy, and she has a wonderful story to share with you. It is her story, and she's the one that will tell it. So I will welcome her right now. Tracy, welcome. Thanks for being with me today.
Thank you for asking me.
Now, we also have another guest with us. She is joining us remotely, and her name is Sarah, and she is both of our super, super close friend. And we're going to bring her in right now. Sarah, can you hear us?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me see if I can see another screen. Oh, there you are. Hi, Sarah. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, where do you live? And tell us just a little bit about who you are.
Well, now I live in New Harmony, Utah. We've been in Utah for, I don't know, like 14 years, maybe 12, 13, 14 years now. But we lived there with you all in East Tennessee for 15 years. We were there. So, and
right.
I was a member of the church for a very long time.
Yes, you were. So I feel the same way about both of you two, that you two were the absolute just rock solid staples of our ward. I mean, everybody knows that. And so I want to ask you, Tracy, why did you want Sarah to join in tonight?
Because I feel like that Sarah is an integral part of my journey being a Mormon. If I didn't know something, I went to Sarah. Sarah was a good friend to me, always. Our kids grew up together. And then when I was excommunicated, Sarah was the one person in our ward that was there for me. Well, and her daughter Amanda. The two of them, we met after the trial, or whatever you call it, when I was excommunicated. And I just, and then when I found out your faith crisis, I reached out to Sarah. Sarah has just been there for me since the moment I've met her. Sarah and I have shared some really intimate, personal things. She knows just about as much about me as anybody can. And I always feel better when Sarah is around. Many times when I went to the temple, I went with Sarah. And so I just wanted her to be here.
Perfect. Well, she's with us tonight. So thank you again, Sarah, for joining us. Will you, Tracy, take us through just a little bit about your upbringing, what religion was for you and your family as a youngster, and how Mormonism kind of came into your life?
Okay. So my mother was raising me up until right before I turned 6, and she had a pretty erratic lifestyle, but we always prayed at night, and she would always send me to Sunday school. So from as long as I can remember, we always, now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take, God bless, and I would name the God blesses. And then I could go to sleep knowing everything was well. I had done my part. And we would she would drop me off at Sunday school. And so from an early age, just Jesus and the Bible and God and all of that was a part of my life. Well, then my mother was tragically murdered, and I came to East Tennessee to live with my grandparents. And so that was a hard time in our lives because my grandmother is mourning her daughter, and we didn't go to church. And so I always just inwardly had a faith, especially now I had a deceased mother, and so it was really important for me to believe in life after death, that I would see her again one day, that she could see me, that we could still communicate. After my mother died, I really prayed to her a lot, but I was 6, so that was a lot of my faith. And then my grandfather had a heart attack when I was 14, and he almost died. These are the grandparents that are raising me. And so he kind of had a deathbed conversion sort of thing. He didn't die. And so we started going to church. And so I was pretty solid in the Baptist church. But during this time, Shelby moved to Shelby's I want to say sister. she's a gal we went to church with for a really long time, and she had moved to my high school, and she was Mormon, and I could not stand her. She drove me crazy. She was always correcting me. Every time I would say, "Oh my God," she'd say gosh," and I'd be like, "How about this?" It drove me crazy, but she was a couple years older than me, so when she went off to BYU, she gave me a Book of Mormon. And I am an avid reader. I read anything that's given to me, so I read a lot of the Book of Mormon. And I was like, this seems pretty okay. But I didn't think that much about it. And then one day, after I'd had my 2 oldest children, missionaries knocked on the door. And they just tracked it into me, and I was like, actually, I've read most of the Book of Mormon. This would have been like in 94, 95. They were like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, hold on." And so I went and got it, and they were like, oh my gosh, this is flipping great. She does have a Book of Mormon. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, "Well, what do you think about it?" And I was like, "I really don't see any problem with it." And so they were like, "Great." And so I started the discussions then. My husband at the time then was like, "I am not interested in this." And I was like, "Well, okay." And then I came across a passage in the Book of Mormon about the dark skin and a white and delightsome people. And I went, "Oh, this is the catch. It's racist." And so the missionaries came back, and I was like, I'm not interested. And they're like, "Man, why?" And, so I told them. They were like, "Yeah, but the Lord changed his mind on that, and we don't know the ways of the Lord." And I was like, that's pretty bad. So that was that. And then I divorced that husband, remarried, had a couple more kids, and my 4th child was born with a pretty serious birth defect. And when that happened, there for a while, we didn't know if she was going to live or die. And the church that we were attending at the time really wasn't there for us. And it was just a really low point in my life, because I was like, I was the same kind of Baptist that I was a Mormon. I was there all the time. I did whatever. And here I've got a child that's maybe dying, and nobody's here to help me. So what's the point in that? So that's kind of when I started wanting to find something else. And the Mormon thing was still in the back of my head. So the Saturday before Easter, in the year of our Lord and Savior, 2000, I was laying on my bed, and I was crying, and I was praying. And my prayer was, I went to every church in a 50-mile radius, and I cannot find anything that feels right for me. Tomorrow's Easter. I want to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I want to take my children to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And I don't know what to do. If there's an answer to this, if it matters, you're going to have to send it to me. And I heard a knock on my door. And my former husband, I heard him answer the door, and he's like, no, go away. And I was like, I knew who it was. And we lived in a split foyer, and I came out of the bedroom, and I stood at the top of the stairs, and I was like, "Are you Mormon missionaries?" And they were like peeking through, yes. And so I was like, "Come in," and they did. And I told them what had just happened. I said, I literally just prayed to know what to do. And they were like, "Here we are." And I said, "Very good." And so I took that to be an answer from the Lord, and I went to the Cumberland Gap ward that Easter Sunday, I might have went by myself. And I was not impressed with the ward at all. And the missionaries kept saying it's not about the people, and so they taught me the discussions, and I was like, yeah, I believe this. And I had the two, in my opinion, the two greatest missionaries ever could be. They were perfect for me, Elder Hatley and Elder Smith, and I named my youngest child after Elder Hatley.
All right, so I have some pictures of Elder Hatley here.
Okay.
Let me see if I can share them. Is this the the one and only?
Yes, Elder Hatley is the one holding the baby.
Okay.
That's the first time he met Hatley, my youngest child. Elder Smith is the one sitting on the sectional. He's the one that actually baptized me.
Okay.
With my son Canaan. And then Elder Hatley in the next picture is in our living room. He hitchhiked from Alaska to surprise us, and we were having family home evening.
Okay, I think I might have a picture of you having. Is this you having family home evening right here?
That is me having family home evening without Elder Hatley.
Okay.
That is before we went to the temple, and as you can see, I'm very stressed. My grandmother had just died.
Oh.
I'm trying to get everything ready to go to the temple. I'm doing the temple discussions where we're having to travel to Rogersville. And yes, there's some missionaries there, and yeah.
Okay, so I jumped a little bit ahead
okay.
with those pictures.
That's
So
okay.
so Elder Hatley was obviously important to you. You named a child after him.
Mm-hmm.
And anything else about your baptism, or did you know Sarah at this point, or?
No, that's
Okay.
how I met Sarah. So I was baptized, and how my first remembrance of an interaction with Sarah is I hadn't been in the church long at all, and we had a Relief Society lesson. Do you remember this, Sarah?
No, maybe I will when you say it.
I think you will. We had a Relief Society lesson, and I pretty much told everybody, all the sisters in the Cumberland Gap ward, that they were not welcoming at all. That I have left my entire family, I've left everything to join this church, and you guys are not nice. and Sarah, I think Sarah was Relief Society president.
May have been.
Know if I was yet. I don't think I might have been I might have been a counselor.
And Sarah came up to me afterward, and she was like, I hate that that's been your experience. Thank you for saying that. We needed to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that. I don't remember talking to you, but I remember you saying something like that. And I was like, this is horrible that we've done this. This is horrible.
And it wasn't really that anybody had done anything. They just hadn't done anything. It wasn't very welcoming.
Okay.
I mean, I've just, like, people in my family had stopped talking to me. Like, the amount of stress that it took to convert to Mormonism in East Tennessee, I can only liken it to when I was excommunicated and the faith crisis.
Okay. Well,
and the ward was very family oriented. Like the ward then, at least for sure, it was many, many families that were interrelated and, had friends and family already.
Right.
And so when new people came in, like when we moved in, we had some distant genealogical connection. And so that like kind of to the Englands, and that kind of hooked us in, and, and also I had relatives in Tennessee and ancestry in Tennessee anyway, and loved Tennessee. And, so that kind of helped us. But yeah, I understood why you had felt that way.
Okay, so basically the way I'm hearing it, you are someone that does what you're doing all the way.
Yes.
And I was looking through your Facebook today, and I found a little quote.
Okay.
I'll add it right here. Do you remember this? This is on your Facebook page.
Yes.
Do it with passion or not at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you know what? That pretty much describes Tracy to me.
It does. That sums me up. If I'm 100% or I'm nothing.
Okay, so you get baptized, and you wasn't crazy about the ward at first, but then what?
So we moved. I hated it that bad. we moved to Morristown, and that ward was even worse. It was really big, and I I felt like a ship without an anchor. Like all I had was my newfound faith, but the culture never took for me. I always, and as a matter, I was thinking about this today. When I moved to Morristown, somebody in our Relief Society presidency came up with this idea of this Walk with Christ program. Somebody wrote some cheesy poems, and this is what Jesus says to you every morning, and you're supposed to read these poems, and then you're supposed to write something down, and then you're supposed to check it off, and you're supposed to do this for a month.
Mm-hmm. What's wrong with that?
It's stupid. And I said that. Okay. I said, I'm sorry. I'm not going to walk with Christ. I'm not going to do road shows, and I'm not going to grind my own wheat. And that did not go over very well either. So I never really, Mormon culture was always hard for me because it didn't really align with the doctrine, and that's all I cared about. I wanted to make sure that I made it to heaven, that my children made it to heaven, that all of my ancestors made it to heaven, and if it all depended on me, so be it. I would get it done.
Okay.
I had no time for walking with Christ.
All right, so I follow you so far. However, it sounds to me like you weren't yet the sister loop, or the Tracy.
Okay,
sorry,
that's
the
okay.
Tracy that I remembered because you were just on fire with everything. So what changed, or was there no change?
There was no change. I was on fire with everything then. I just wasn't on fire with the cultural stuff. And so then our son had really bad asthma, and I almost lost him. And so I asked his doctor, what can we do? And he said, well, you could move to the desert. And I was like, I'm going to Zion. That's what I'm going to do. These stupid Tennessee hicks don't know.
Yeah.
And beep. And so I'm going to Utah. That made me really miss Cumberland Gap.
So you went to Utah. Okay.
Yes, we moved to Utah. We moved to southern Utah, and what a culture shock. Holy cow. And then I realized that almost everybody I knew in Utah, it was all culture. I was like the only person I knew that had read the Book of Mormon. I'm like, how in the heck can you espouse this church? And I mean, it's a weekend read. What are you talking about? You haven't read the entire Book of Mormon. So that was, when I moved to Utah, I started to have a few cracks. But I do want to back up. One of the major cracks in my shelf, because I didn't care about the cultural stuff. So I wanted to be baptized for my mother in the Salt Lake Temple. Mm-hmm. And I was not going to be able to do that until after I received my own initiatory and endowment and was sealed because of logistics. I just had it in my mind. I wanted to do it in the Salt Lake Temple. She was special to me. I wouldn't have life without her. I want to go to Salt Lake, and that's where I want to be baptized. I see that's silly now, but to me, that's what I wanted to do. So I did, and I had the worst experience. I go to the temple. People are not very nice in the Salt Lake Temple. The workers were not very nice. And when I stood there and they baptized me for and behalf of my mother, I didn't feel anything. And I was like, oh, why? This should be a highlight in my spiritual journey. Mm-hmm. And I feel nothing. And I watched I think it was your last interview with Nathan. Mm-hmm. And you said something that really struck me. I kept this to myself for months. And I don't know if you remember, there was a Brother Davis that was in our ward. I finally told Brother Davis about that experience. And he said, well, your mother must not have accepted the gospel. So it wasn't the temple that had a problem. It was my mother. Mm. And I was like, and that made me really sad. I was like, oh no. I hadn't even considered that. Maybe that's why I got such a terrible feeling.
Okay. So, Sarah, can you describe a little bit about about what Tracy's talking about with this work in the temples for people that may not be familiar, like what that means to do baptisms or other work in our temples?
Well, you're saving people.
That's what we believe in the Mormon, that we're saviors on Mount Zion, right? That we're doing something that they can't do.
Yeah, and you're giving them the opportunity to accept the gospel just like you did. And you know, I went through I didn't get I had my children, I think different ones of my children get baptized for my parents because I'm a convert also. And so I had family members that my children were baptized for them while I was there watching. I did endowments for my family. One of the very last things I ever did in the church was get sealed to my mom and my dad, who had passed away a while before. So, and that was a big thing because I was on my way out and I was like, do I do this?
So it's definitely a huge part of Mormon. The whole Mormon experience is
It's the point.
yeah, for sure. And
Goal.
when you went, you say it just really didn't do anything for you.
No.
Okay.
No.
So
And
you put it on the shelf.
I put it on the shelf, and then, like I said, I spoke to another member of the ward, and he told me that it was probably my mother didn't accept it, and so I was like, okay, that makes sense. All right, so this is my mother problem, not a church problem.
I don't like that.
I need right.
I don't like that. But you must have figured out a way to make that work, which I don't like to just make something work. I think Nathan also talked about that. I don't want to make it work. It either
Right.
But you obviously did in one way or another.
I just decided, well, I mean, it's just my mom's not any more special than anybody else. There's going to be plenty of people that are not going to accept the gospel, so why can't she be one of them? So, yeah, I mean, so the cultural Mormonism, like I said, it never took for me. And in saying that, that may sound weird for you because I did not, anything that came from Gordon B. Hinckley was not cultural to me. I used to say Gordon B. Hinckley could tell me to stand on my head 3 times a day, and I promise you I will do it. Even if I'm in the middle of something, if everybody's going to laugh at me, I would say, President Hinckley told me to do this, and I'm doing it. So and the experience that I had about praying, you know, I freaking prayed Joseph Smith's prayer, basically. I don't know which church to join, please show me. And then the Mormon missionaries knocked on my door. So I was like, I have to believe this. And, you know, the part in the Book of Mormon about the dark skin and I was like, I have to trust God. Who am I to question God?
Okay. So Sarah, Tracy talks a little bit about this Mormon culture. So you lived in Tennessee and you went to Utah. What do you notice about Mormon culture? And was that anything tough for you?
Yeah, it was hard for me because I was raised, even though I'm old, I was raised by parents who taught me that, like, there was no difference between what a woman could do and what a man could do. I wasn't raised to think that I had a certain role really as a woman and that I was going to be the one who made the bread and cooked the meals and cleaned the house and stayed home with the kids. I was raised to, like, I wanted to be a doctor when I was a little girl, and my parents were like fully supportive of that. And so I joined the church when I was 15 years old, and I never felt like I really fit in as a Mormon woman into the culture. I never have made bread. It was a big deal. Like, it was a big deal. I remember I learned to cross stitch or something. They taught me when I was like a teenager or something. And so that was like a big deal. I learned some crafty woman thing to do. but I never was like that. And thank goodness I married someone who loved to cook, who happy with cleaning, happy to change diapers. I did all that stuff too, but he liked to cook and not to clean the dishes after, and I didn't mind doing that. So he was the cook. So you guys probably know that. I mean, some people who know me well know that Vaughn, my husband, has always cooked pretty much all the food. And that's not Mormon. Really.
Right.
Okay.
That's not Mormon culture. And so I always felt like I was kind of on the outs with Mormon culture. But I went to BYU. I joined the church. I lived in Florida when I joined the church. And I started out at the University of Miami in Florida my first year in college, but then I transferred to BYU. And it was kind of a shock for me. It was just so very different. And I loved my ward in Florida. It was great. I was super close to everyone. And people were devoted to the gospel. We had a youth group where a few of us were converts, and we were like studying the gospel. I mean, we're 15, 16 years old, and we're like really into it, and we're getting our hands on any book that we could, and we're reading about the history. And there wasn't that much then. There was no internet yet. And so it was harder to get a hold of information, but whatever we could find, we did. And we were very, very devoted. We were a group of kids that were very devoted to the gospel. And then I got to Utah, and it didn't feel the same way. Like, I can relate to some of what Tracy's saying about some people not having read the Book of Mormon and stuff. It was a little less like that because the students at BYU came from all over. And so there was more gung-ho, and we've read and we've gone to seminary and stuff like that. But still, it was a surprise to me that people weren't as devoted and didn't know as much. I'm like, I've only been a member since I was 15 years old. So how do I know more than some of these people about the church and what Joseph Smith said and whatever? I think I'd read the whole teachings of the prophet. After I got baptized in March when I was 15, and that summer I read the whole Doctrine and Covenants while I was on vacation. So
Okay. So
and that wasn't who everybody was, and I was surprised.
So culture aside, you talked about how you loved the prophet, and anything he said went. You believed it. Mm-hmm. So take me up until the point that you moved back to Cumberland Gap.
So we lived in Utah for about 2 years, and it was really hard on my oldest daughter, Leslie. Like, she was not included with other girls. Like, my visiting teachers, like, we lived in the mountains of Utah, and they had babies, and they came by at like, they called me and was like, hey, can we come by like real early in the morning before school starts? And I was like, I guess, yeah. And like, they would not even come inside. They would leave their babies in the car seat in the car, open the door and say, is there anything we can do for you? And I'll be like, no, I'm good. Okay, thank you. And so it was hard. I made one really good friend while I was there. She and I would walk together every morning, and she gave my oldest daughter piano lessons, and I traded babysitting. I would watch her 2 kids because her oldest had type 1 diabetes, and she couldn't find anybody to watch him. And so at that time, I was reading everything I could about nutrition, so I actually understood a lot about diabetes and carbs and glycemic index and all that. And I said, I'll watch him. So we became really good friends, and that is part of the sad part of my story when I was excommunicated, because I loved her like a sister. Like, we were so close. So anyway, we stayed in Utah for 2 years. Canaan was doing better. His lungs were strengthened. I was like, get me back to Tennessee. I hate this place. I don't think it's good for my kids. I don't like the church here. Take me back to Cumberland Gap, which is pretty ironic since I hated Cumberland Gap in the beginning. So that's probably when you remember me.
Okay.
I came back to Cumberland Gap, and I remember you and Amy. I always kind of thought of you as the darlings of Cumberland Gap. You're both very good looking. Like, everything you do, it's like the Midas touch. It just seemed like everything was wonderful. But I felt like you guys were too cool for me.
Well, Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
However, I thought that you hung the moon. You could do anything. You knew all the answers to all the questions. You could teach anything. You could bear a testimony, and it was the one that everyone remembered from the day. That you did it. You did all the things.
And I did.
You and Sarah. That was my experience. That between you two, you could do anything. And so when I was called into the bishopric, we would have little, meetings. Who can do this? Oh, I don't know. How about Tracy? How about Sarah? It didn't matter. That's the way I remember it. Sarah, how do you remember that time?
Well, I don't remember myself that way, but Tracy, yes, was absolutely that way. Absolutely. I loved Cumberland Gap Ward, by the way. I loved it from the second I was in there, because my first Sunday, my first day in gospel doctrine class, the teacher told a racist joke during the lesson, and I have black kids, so that did not go over well with me. But basically, I loved everyone there, and I loved Cumberland Gap Ward, and loved you and Amy, and loved Tracy. Tracy could do anything, but I did get called to a lot of callings.
So speaking of doing anything, so we showed this picture already. Here you are in the primary presidency, and here you are doing something.
I'm canning wheat.
Canning wheat. All right, and then we already talked about you leading family home evenings. I'm sure those were a riot.
I also fed the missionaries every week.
Okay.
I fed the missionaries every week. We had family home evening every week. We had scripture study morning and night. We had family prayer. We listened to LDS music on the way to school. Like, I am confident in saying no one's lived the gospel any better than I have. I feel that is true. I don't know how you could.
Yeah. Well, and then here you are. Go ahead, Sarah.
I wasn't as diligent as Tracy. I was.
Yes, you were.
Study morning and night. I was not. I wasn't evening 100%, probably 90.
Well, here you are teaching early seminary, and I think there was even a time that you were seminary teacher and
gospel doctrine teacher.
That's kind of
a lot.
I hope I wasn't.
You were.
Okay. Oops.
There's my child in the middle there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're doing it all.
For me, I was teaching seminary. I had convinced Claiborne County High School to let me teach seminary in the gymnasium, which was no small feat. So instead of teaching it in my class, they opened it up, and they didn't want to. And I was like, you guys have other Christian meetings at the church. I will take you to court.
Oh, I had no idea.
You can't leave me out and do these other things. And they were like, okay. So I was teaching that side, the Tazewell side, the early morning seminary at Claiborne County High School. And once again, I took it very seriously. Like the teenagers, I just took it very seriously. Every lesson I taught, I took very seriously. I would prepare for hours. And not only that, I was aware of some members would just hang out in the foyer during gospel doctrine time. And I was like, nay, we will not have that. And so I would come up with ways to make it exciting. Because I thought the gospel was exciting. The gospel was exciting to me. And I think that was contagious. People felt that. And I also found out that Nathan Hinckley could sing. And I'm like, if I promise a song from Nathan Hinckley, I'm going to get the crowds. And I did. Okay. And so I'm teaching gospel doctrine. And I have always had friends that were gay. So the homosexual situation was always on my radar. That always mattered to me. I never understood why anybody would care what two people are doing consensually in the privacy of their own home. It never made sense to me. So, Jeffrey Holland did an article in the Ensign where he talked about, I felt like what he was saying was there was coming a time where homosexual members would be able to be married in the temple. He didn't come right out and say that, but he said, if you are struggling with feelings of homosexuality, if you are homosexual, we love you, we need you, hang on. And I was so touched by that I went to the bishop and I said, I want to teach this lesson in gospel doctrine. And he said, Elder Holland said it, you can teach it. And I said, very well, I will. And so I devoted an entire gospel doctrine class to that article. And was just saying, if any of you here are struggling with feelings of homosexuality, and I don't even like to say it like that, there's nothing to struggle with, but at the time,
yeah.
Yes, like, hang on, we love you, we need you, don't give up, the Lord has a plan. And I felt so good about this. I'm like, finally. And then General Conference happened. And Boyd Packer told a joke about a kindergarten class that a kid brought a kitten to kindergarten and they were trying to find out whether it was a boy or girl. And the teacher didn't know really how to tell if a kitten was a boy or girl either. And so they said, well, why not take a vote on it? And then President Packer said, you can take a vote on whether you're a man or a woman, and God makes no mistakes. And I was like, and everybody laughed.
That was a really good impression, by the way. Not to detract from your story, but I remember you telling me this part, and that was...
I was sitting in the ward because I was so devout that I didn't even want to watch it online or what. I want my children to be in the ward when the Lord speaketh from the, I was crazy. But I'm just sitting there and I'm looking at people laughing. And I'm like, well, Elder Holland said, and so I asked to have a meeting with the bishop, and I was also starting to have panic attacks at this time because I was very unhappy in my marriage. And the bishop knew that I was very unhappy in my marriage, and he knew why I was very unhappy in my marriage. And he had told my husband at the time, you're going to lose her if you don't stop this. And we went to counseling with a member in the church who was a therapist, who is a friend of Sarah's, and I had been to marriage counseling several times, and I knew I could not make it work with this man. I mean, he did have me grinding wheat, and not with an electric grinder. Everything just got, you couldn't just buy the generic bread. You should make your own bread. Couldn't just make your own bread. We should get the wheat and grind it ourselves. Mm-hmm. Well, why would we go to the cannery and get the wheat? Why don't we just grow the wheat? And I'm like, I have 5 kids. I can't keep doing this. So there was a lot of things going on in my personal life, and I started having panic attacks. And
teaching seminary.
And
teaching gospel.
Yes, and having, I think at that time I had 4 kids at home. I think my oldest had went to BYU, Hawaii. She maybe was home when it started. So I was about to crack. So I went to that bishop and I said, I've got some things to talk to you about. And so I repeated the President Packer and Elder Holland stories, and I was like, they both are supposed to be speaking for the Lord. I mean, the ensign is the word of the Lord as far as I was concerned. And he said, you think too much. And I said, I could have just stayed Baptist to be told that. Mm. And he said, well, you do, and you just need to stop. And I said, I do not know who is in my seminary class that might be homosexual. I do not know who sits in my gospel doctrine class who might be homosexual. I am not going to say anything that would cause anybody to have a mental breakdown and maybe hurt themselves. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And he said, yes, you can. And I said, I really can't. And he said, yes, you can. I know you can do it. Wipe your brow, get back in the game.
Okay. Did you have conversations with Sarah at this time? Do you know? Would she have been someone you would...
I don't remember.
look to for. Okay, but
I did or I didn't.
Yeah, you did. I remember you telling me about the whole thing with Elder Holland and Boyd
President
K.
Packer.
Packer and all that. And I remember you told me when you were told that by the bishop, he told me essentially the same thing at one point too, for
okay.
different reason. But I needed to be released from a calling, and I told him I might die if I stayed in the calling, and he said, "Yes, you might," but he didn't release me, and yeah, that was bad. So yes, you did talk to me, and you were at my house one time all
And I had a
night
panic
long
attack.
with a panic attack. Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so
about it.
I think at this point, I'm probably in the bishopric. I don't really remember much of this. As I told you, I think he might have kept a lot to himself. But there was a point that he did ask both the counselors to join. Would you like to talk about what led up to the next stage?
So I went back to him and I said, if you don't release me, I'm not showing up. Like, I'm not teaching seminary anymore, and I'm not teaching gospel doctrine, and I'm getting a divorce. And he said, and it was cold in his office, and he had offered me his jacket when I came in. So I'm sitting there with his jacket, and he said, "You are not getting a divorce." And I said, "You misunderstand me. I'm not asking your permission. As a courtesy to you, I'm letting you know that I am getting a divorce. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to die. I'm not staying with this man another minute. I'm out. I'm done." And he said, "I am a prominent member of this community, and I will make sure you lose your children." And I got up and I took his jacket off and I threw it in his face, and I walked out. So I stopped going to church. I got a divorce, and so I was not attending church. I may have come for maybe Hatley's baptism. I might have shown up every once in a while, but I'm divorced and I'm dating a man. So I'm in my 40s, I'm dating a man. And then you show up at my house. Well, I mean, I don't remember. Did we have cell phones then? I can't remember. I don't know if you messaged me. I don't know if you sent me a letter. I don't know if a pigeon came. I don't know. It feels like a long time ago. But I had an appointment with Nathan Hinckley, and he was coming to my house. And this was very good because I missed you. And I missed the Cumberland Gap ward. But I no longer believed the church was true. Just because, of that, the homosexual issue. I was just like, I wasn't trying to make it fit. It didn't fit. Two prophets said two opposite things. It's not true. There's nothing else I can do about it. It's not true. And so we had an appointment for you to come over, and the way I remember it, and we all remember things differently, so I could be misremembering it, but I feel like I asked you when you came if you would sing a song. Because, and I'm not trying to just unduly compliment you, but there is no one in this world I'd rather hear sing than you. It's just always been the case. I literally, other than Amy, I am your biggest fan. I love to hear you sing. I just do.
So did I?
You did not.
Okay.
So you showed up at my house, and you had a letter for me, and you told me, you were like, so, some people are talking, and pretty sure you're breaking the law of chastity. Like, you're dating somebody, and are you? And I said, well, yes, I am. And you said, well, we need you to stop. And I said, I'm not going to stop. And you were like, well, you guys could get married. I'm like, I'm not going to marry somebody because Nathan Hinckley thinks I should. So to be fair, I did make a covenant in the temple to keep the law of chastity. And to be fair, I did break that covenant. That is all true. That happened. And so you said, well, I will report back to the bishop and I will let you know. And you did not sing a song. And my kids were there. I think we walked away and had some conversation privately. But everybody, when you walked out of the house, everybody was just like, and I remember you standing there and you were crying and you looked at me and you said, I depend on you. Like, you don't know what your testimony means to me. Like, you're breaking my heart. And I was like, well, Nathan, your testimony does not need to depend on me. And so you left, and I got a letter telling me that there was going to be, what do they call it? I call it a trial when I tell it, but...
Yeah, so people call it a church court or a, I don't know, what's the other
Disciplinary
name? Disciplinary council.
council.
Yeah, that's what it was.
It's changed the name of it since then. So,
okay, so my side of the story is just like yours, except for the bishop had said, okay, well, we need to send a letter and have her report and we'll decide what to do then.
Mm-hmm.
So we did. Did you get sent the letter? Or
I did.
Okay.
I got sent the letter, and I showed up to the council.
And you showed up. So for people that might not know, when a woman is being brought under for a disciplinary council, it can be held by just the bishopric. So it would be like the bishop and the counselors. If it's a male member, then and they're a priesthood holder, then they would have to report to the stake presidency where there's more people involved, and kind of like I don't know, they're more important, or they're so that seems a little weird, and I believe they've changed that now. So that's
what I heard you say. I don't know.
That's great, but at the time you came in and it was the two counselors and the bishop
and the secretary. There was like 5 men there.
Okay. So 5 men.
And me.
And you.
Asking me.
And when, at the time, and I believe it's still the same way, one counselor is assigned to kind of represent the member, and the other counselor is assigned to kind of represent the church and to protect the church, the good name of the church. Mm-hmm. Well, I was assigned to represent you. And so we called you in. Correct me at any point, but we called you in and basically asked if you would had anything to say about these charges against the law of chastity, and you said no. It's true. It's true.
It's true.
And so.
And I want to intercept and say that when I got a divorce and I moved out and I was raising my kids, I left the church alone. And that was some of my beef with you. I'm like, how is it that this man is out here, And I was just a single mom, barely making it, just living my life, and I'm getting called in for this. So yes, I was very nervous. I was very scared, but I was like, I am not missing this. If they want to burn me at the stake, I'll be there. I will go with my head held high. Yes, I'm breaking the law of chastity. Shoot me.
Right. So after your testimony, we excused you for a second and we sat in the bishop's office. I'm not supposed to talk about this, but I don't really care anymore. But I just tried to argue, well, she is divorced and she's not attending right now. She's not active, whatever, is this really, necessary, and this kind of thing. And basically the bishop said, she admits to it. She's not sorry for it. She needs to be excommunicated. And so we said, okay, well, we agree with you. Mm-hmm. And I'm ashamed of that now, to be perfectly honest. But at the time, I felt like my responsibility, kind of like you were saying about the prophet, whatever he says goes and everything. And I felt like that was what my responsibility was, is to give counsel to the bishop, but whatever his decision was, to support him and to act as a unified, body. And so that's what I did. And we decided to, we didn't tell you at that point, right? We said we would let you know later.
like you told me. I mean, I did get a letter, an official letter, but I mean, maybe I was just like, obviously they're going to. I said, I'm not going to repent. Like, this is really none of your business. Like, I'm a grown woman. I mean, so I don't remember.
So we kicked you out.
You kicked me out. And I remember walking out of the ward building, and it was really traumatic for me because when I was in middle school, I had a math teacher that was grooming me. And when it came to light, I'm the one that got ostracized. And I had to sit alone in the cafeteria. I wasn't allowed to sit with girls or boys. They protected this teacher. I was told that I could no longer hug any of my teachers. And if, you know, anybody that knows me knows I'm a very physical person. If I like you, you're going to get a hug from me. And so I remember walking down that hallway and just being like, here we go again. I mean, it was, and just that ward where I was baptized and where I'd learned so much. And, you know, I started off hating it and then I loved it. And it was a Wednesday night. People were there for mutual. And I was like, does everybody know what, you know? And Sarah and her daughter Amanda had told me, I think they had a play rehearsal at LMU. And I remember meeting them at the gas station at the crossroads. And it was cold. Was it cold? Maybe it was hot. I don't know. But either they got into my car or I got into theirs. Which was it? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I just remember all being in a car. I remember that.
And I told them what happened. And I really thought that Sarah was going to be like, well, I'm done with you too. And that Amanda was. But that was not. Sarah said, I don't understand why I feel this way. I'll let Sarah say what she said.
I'm going to cry, I think. Sorry. Can you switch it so I can see you guys?
Sure.
I can see myself. Okay. It's too hard for me to only look at myself while I say this. Okay. It's going to be weird for me to say this, but I had one of the most spiritual experiences of my life in that car that night. And so I don't believe in religion at all anymore, but I believe in spirituality, and I have spiritual experiences before I joined the church, while I was a member, and since. The church didn't change it, didn't stop it, didn't make it happen. Okay. So I've had these spiritual experiences, but I did not expect to feel like I did that night. I expected to still love Tracy and for it not to matter in how I felt about her, but I did not expect what happened to me. And I don't want to speak for Amanda, but I know from her talking to me that she felt the same way and felt the same kinds of things. But I felt like there were angels in the car with us and that they were telling me that Tracy was fine, that there was nothing wrong with Tracy and that everything was good with her, that what had happened was kind of like a travesty, and that she was fine. And it was just this overwhelming feeling of being told that by otherworldly sources. So that is what I felt that night. And I told you that night. I mean, you said you remember that I said it while I was there. Like, it was overwhelming. And so I knew Tracy was fine. And I knew that God, or whatever God is, didn't care, was not angry with Tracy. Tracy had done nothing wrong. I don't know if I said those words, but that was what I felt. But how can a Mormon say you've done nothing wrong when, you know, the church says you've done something wrong? But I felt Tracy had done nothing wrong, and I felt like I was being told that, and that she was totally fine.
Did that hurt your testimony at all, Sarah, when that happened with Tracy?
Okay, I think I was like edging my way slowly away because I think I already was starting to like read things and think things, and I always had fudged some things in my mind. Like I always believed there was progression between kingdoms because I never believed that the God I believed in would separate me from my family. So I knew that my non-member family, that he was never going to separate me from them, and so there had to be progression between kingdoms after you died. um, and I would tell people that, and I would search in the early writings of the church to find leaders of the church that had said that there was progression between kingdoms. Okay, so I tried to fix everything to be like I saw God. And so I won't say that it shook my testimony, but I knew what I knew in that moment. I knew that
Yeah.
Tracy was okay. I also knew that people had made mistakes in their handling with her. I didn't like resent you guys or think you guys were horrible people. I just thought you were doing what the church told you to do and it wasn't right.
Right.
I didn't think the whole way she'd been treated for a very long time was right. I I felt very badly. I felt like it was kind of a witch hunt against her for a long time.
Yeah.
The way people acted and spoke about her, it was wrong.
Well, I can definitely tell you that I knew of then several people that would have been guilty of the same thing that were not brought in.
Exactly. And I knew that too.
Yeah.
And
I had been Relief Society president, or maybe I was then, and I knew that too. It was
Right.
ridiculous to single her
Yeah.
out.
And for me, I felt like that I still feel like that was one of the strongest moments of my life when I stood there in front of you all and I said, yes, I am breaking the law of chastity. Could have lied.
That's what everyone else.
That's what everyone else does.
Yeah. Yeah. So, moral of the story: don't be honest. Is that what we're saying?
Don't be honest if you don't want to be excommunicated.
Okay, so I remember mixed emotions, like majorly, like what was that right? But I need to support the bishop. But ultimately, that's what won out for me was we had to do what the bishop. Mm-hmm. Well, time went on. We didn't see you anymore. Maybe I don't know if you showed up for anything, but I know that there was a couple times shortly after I became bishop. I'm actually proud to say that we never held any church court on anyone while I was bishop for 5 years. However, I did show up at your house a few times. Kind of like the promptings that you talked about with the good feelings of the Book of Mormon. I would just be like, man, I miss Tracy, and maybe we could go back. And I think I probably visited 2 or 3 times, maybe over 5 years. Does that sound about right?
I remember once.
Okay.
But it could have been more.
I think at least a couple, just to see if we could reach out
And you would message me from time to time. Hey, how you doing? We're having a cookout at the house. Why don't you bring the kids? So you did do that.
I know there was one time you weren't there, but I was speaking with your son, and I wasn't sure of how you were going to feel about that. Kind of going. I didn't want it to feel like I was going around Mom, but I wanted to reach out to your children. So that was, I didn't know the best way to do it, but suffice it to say, I cared about you guys and tried in whatever way I could to reach out a little bit. Probably not anything like I should have, but...
Well, and I would say this, that, Sarah did it right. I mean, you were the man that came to me and said, hey, we're going to... It was already broken. I don't think there's anything that you could have done, that you could have showed up at my house and I would have been like, oh my God, it's Nathan Hinckley. So good to see you. I mean, I was already like, you betrayed me. That's how I felt. I felt very, because I did love you, and then I hated you, because that's, I believe, do it with passion or do it with nothing at all. I can promise you I've never felt lukewarm about you. And so, I was pissed. I was just like, oh, it must be so nice to be Nathan Hinckley, and whatever. So yeah, I was pissed. And then when you and I were talking later on, and I'd forgotten this, I actually prayed about the Book of Mormon again, and I messaged you. You were on vacation. This was like a year or two after I was excommunicated, and I said, I want to be rebaptized. That's how hard this is. What if I'm wrong? What if I don't have a year's supply of food? I don't wear my garments. I broke my covenants. It still pops up. What if I'm wrong?
So, I guess let's fast forward a little bit. Other than some messages and things, and you didn't have the best of feelings for me, somewhere around this point, I think, Sarah, you guys left the church. Is that about where we're at in the timeline?
We actually resigned in 2014, but we were coming out before that, and that's a whole long story we don't want to get into at all.
No, we probably don't have time
for different reasons than most people do, and I was like trying to tell you about it.
Yes, you reached out to me and you said, I really would love to tell you about some things. And this is kind of a...
Because you're the Mormon moron.
This is kind of a beat down Nathan night, but I basically told you, I don't want to hear it. I mean,
You did. You didn't basically. You said, I don't want to hear it.
I don't want to hear it. And I said, don't reach out to me again with this kind of stuff.
And you signed it, Bishop Hinckley. You know what you did? I told some friends about it. Sorry, Nathan, I did tell some friends.
No, that's okay.
About you. And they said, oh, he jangled his keys at you. Your priesthood keys. Because I said he signed it Bishop Hinckley, and I've always called him Nathan, and he's always called me Sarah. Of course you always call me Sarah, but but I always called you Nathan. I mean, I don't remember ever calling you Bishop Hinckley. It just was like I'd called you Nathan too long, I think, to have been able to do that. Anyway, and you signed it Bishop Hinckley, and I thought, but I still loved you, Nathan. I still loved you. I understood. I was sad. It hurt my feelings. Yeah. But I still loved you. I understood why you did that.
I did not.
So
you didn't excommunicate me. You just wrote me a message.
Yeah, I wrote you a message.
And I felt at that time and maybe I told you this, I felt like the Lord had told us to move to Utah partly so that you wouldn't have to excommunicate me. Because I felt like you would have had to been in the position to have excommunicated me.
Well, sorry for what I said.
It's okay.
Was more. I have treated some people like that. I wasn't super nice to my sister when she left. When Nathan, the other, when he left, I wasn't mean to them, but it hurt.
Yeah.
I was like, Sarah's gone and Nathan's gone. I was like, what's going on?
I kicked Tracy out.
Yeah, we kicked Tracy out. I couldn't get her to come back. So I guess we will fast forward until about 2 years ago. Wow, has it been that long? And close to it. And I started to see some problems. Of course, many people know my story, but it comes down to the gospel topic essays that the church asked me as bishop to read. And they said, hey, what do you think about these, and asked me to respond. And I thought I could click through and be done with that and go do something else. And they demanded long answers and in-depth answers, and that was definitely a major shelf thing for me. However, I finished my time as bishop, served on the High Council, but then it always kind of lingered. Long story short, I decided that the church was not what I had thought it was. My wife, some of my kids removed their names. My wife removed her name, and I still haven't, but I lost my testimony. And I did reach out to Sarah really early on and apologized and kind of told her what was going on with us. And she said, can we call? Can we talk? I want to be there for you. She really offered nothing but love, even after I treated her the way that I did. I did the same with my sister. It was actually on April Fool's Day, because she says, "Is this an April Fool's joke?" Mm-hmm. I said, "I'm sorry for the way I treated you when you left the church." And she said, "Oh, it's okay." And I said, "I've been at the lowest of lows ever." And some people have saw the picture of me in the hospital, and so actually some time went by, and I should have reached out to you.
And that's the question that I want to ask you, because that's the question that gets asked, that pops up on the post that you and I did. You see people who have been excommunicated, and they say, "I wonder if they think about me, the bishop that excommunicated me, the members of the bishopric." And did you think about me? Why didn't you reach out to me? That's my question.
Right. Well, ultimately, we did, but I'm not exactly sure.
It was me.
Okay. It was you.
It was.
And there's no answer. I should have. However, I think the only answer that I have is that I felt like my hands were tied, that it was the bishop that did what the bishop did, and he quite frankly didn't need my approval or anything. So,
But did you think about me?
Oh, certainly, yeah. I think even to this day, I'm still deconstructing. And so I think you beat me to the punch, for sure. I had made a habit of reaching out to many people, my sister and Sarah, but certainly you beat me, and you said something like, "Just so you know, you're not the only one that's been in the hospital over this." Something like that, right?
Yep.
And that's when it was a dagger, and I'm like, wow, I'm too late with this. And we, to your credit, I said, "I'm sorry," and you said, "That's all I needed to hear." And
yeah, and it is. So Sarah's daughter had reposted something you had said, and it was just you, I don't remember. It was you ranting about the Mormon church and all this. And I was like, what in the world? What? And so I messaged Sarah, and I was like, "Nathan Hinckley." And she goes, "Yes, isn't it wonderful?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, "Well, he messaged me, and he said he was sorry." And I was like, "Well, that's nice. He didn't me." And so, and then I think I sat on it for 30 seconds, and I was like, and yes, and then you said you're sorry, and I have forgiven you. And yeah, then we met.
so we planned a double date.
A triple date.
Let's see. Oh, that's right.
I have,
let me see, I have a picture here. So we went out on the lake and went to a marina and caught up a little bit and had dinner and got soaked. rained on us for a hour-long boat ride.
Soaked.
I don't know if I've ever been that soaked in my life.
And you were singing something about getting married.
We were having a good time.
And I was like, I don't know what he...
We were having the time of our life, and it just felt so good to kind of not really close that chapter, but in a way, the chapter that caused me to put a organization or a corporation or a church in front of people. Yeah.
A real
And
person that
yeah.
you knew and that you had loved. And yeah, so, and I'm glad. And you said that, I don't know if it was the stake president or a member of the stake presidency said you in his opinion, you're in a better spot than you've ever been in.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with that. And I mean, that's, when I was a member of the church, you were always told bad things were going to happen if you left the church. Like, you know, you were going to start, I don't know, sacrificing kittens or something. I don't know what they thought you were going to do, but, you know, terrible things were going to happen. And I believe that I am a better person now without the Mormon church. I have, you know, a little business where I have lots of customers with special needs that love me, that I love them. I live my life with integrity, just like I did in the church, but now without all of that judgment. I don't care if your shoulders are showing. I don't care if you're drinking coffee. I don't care if you're drinking a beer. I don't care if you're smoking a cigarette. I don't care. Mm-hmm. I don't care who you're sleeping with. I don't care how many people you're sleeping. I don't care. I don't care. And not to be the world's police feels so good.
I agree. That's how I feel. I noticed that it was not only with other people that I loved, it was causing a problem in my own family. Mm-hmm. I was not the man that I needed to be, and I felt like the church had a big part in that. And as soon as I let that go, I agree with the stake president. I became a better person. That wasn't our only get-together.
No.
A little bit later, we go off to a concert that you invited us to go to and had a great time. And I hope that there's many more.
I hope so too.
Pictures to come.
Yes.
So, oh my gosh, that's quite a story. Sarah, do you have any thoughts on how that story wrapped up?
It makes me so happy. I cannot tell you how happy it makes me to see these pictures. And like when I knew you all were getting together the first time, you know, with everybody, I don't want to say everybody's name, but I just was so happy and I wanted to be there so badly. I was like, these are my friends that I love so much, and I'm so happy for them. And I'm just over the moon about it, really. I mean, you guys have just made me really happy with this whole thing.
Well, thank you so much for joining. Now, before we go, I got a song for you.
Oh, thank you.
All right,
and you sang at my mother's funeral. I just want to mention that too. You sang at my mother's funeral, and it was very beautiful.
Thank you. So this is a song that you actually sent me.
I did.
Yeah. And when I was, and still am, deconstructing, sometimes I would get up and go grab my guitar and just play music, and I couldn't sleep, and you sent me this song, and you're like, this one hits hard. Mm-hmm. And this is Ward Davis, Threads. Another day, the same old hell, digging deeper down into a dried up well, beaten worn and torn to shreds. I'm down to threads. make it seem like I don't care. But that's just the brand of armor I wear. Strands of pride hide my regret. I'm down to threads. And I hold myself together just to see how much I can take. But I'm weary and I'm weathered, and I know that I'm gonna break. Another night I try to sleep. There ain't nothing left to hold but these old sheets, because her side of our bed is down to threads. And my poor heart in my chest is down to threads.
Thank you.
What a wonderful song. I had never heard that. And when you sent that to me, I've not been able to get it out of my head.
I wonder, you said you liked it, and I was like, I'm glad you sang it. Thank you.
Thank you for making the drive up here and for going through this story one more time. And I think we can put it on the shelf now. And
Can I take the scarlet letter off my chest?
Yes. Yes, you can. And Sarah, again, thanks for joining and for the sweet person you've always been to me, to Tracy, and to everyone that you've ever known. So, and
Thank you for letting me be here.
yes,
I love you, Sarah.
I love
and
you.
thank you to our viewers who have given over an hour to hear this awesome, heartwarming story in the end. And may we all be a little bit more like Tracy. And talk to you next time.